So welcome everyone to the June 2025 GUAC community meeting. As usual, this meeting is being recorded and will be on our YouTube channel later. And as always, it is subject to the Linux Foundation antitrust policy and the OpenSSF code of conduct. Um, I don't believe I see any new faces on here. I think I've got everyone who's here so far on the notes. So we'll jump right into some business. And to do that, I'm going to share my web browser. First things first, we are officially notifying the world of GUAC 1.0. Woo! So yes, that blog post is now published. If you haven't seen already, Parth hit the button on the release shortly, like within the past hour or so, and I just ran through the demos with it, and everything seems to work as expected. Um, so you know, I sincerely think we should all just like take a moment and be proud of ourselves for getting GUAC to this point. I put together some stats from the LFX Insights. So I'll share that now. This is technically in a presentation, but I'm using a single monitor and I always forget how to make it be full screen and still share and whatever. So we're just going to flip through it real quick. This is nothing fancy. But as an overview, this is from LFX Insights. So it has been 3 years since the first commit to GUAC repos, according to Insights analysis here. And GUAC is apparently valued at $1.5 billion. So good job, everyone. Um, there is some discussion ongoing about the accuracy of that calculation. I believe the Linux kernel itself came in at like 1.4 billion. So, I think checks will be arriving for everyone very soon on that. Um, but in all seriousness, over those 3 years, we've had 403 people contributing to the repos anywhere in the GuacSec organization. I imagine some of those are probably double counted, so and so at GitHub dot, whatever, however the web-based commits get counted. I know there's been a few times I've accidentally used my personal email address instead of my work email address to sign off on a commit, etc. Um, but even with, some duplication, like that's still a really big number. And that's pretty awesome to see. I don't think it'll surprise anyone that for across all repos, all-time contributors, Parth Patel is the leader with 22% of contributions. Brandon Lum, Mihai, Jeff, myself, Nathan, and Mike are also on the list, as well as the Kodiak bot. Um, I think I'll probably file a feature request with Insights, but can we, mask the bot accounts? Um, but yeah, so, this is pretty awesome to see. There's a lot of different people on here. Um, if we look at just GUAC proper, Parth has an even more commanding lead. Um, we see a couple new names on there as well. Um, in the docs, surprisingly, I was in the lead for that, probably because of a bunch of refactoring and stuff I did. Kind of juices the stats a little bit, I think. And then again, Parth and Brandon, Jeff, Mihai, Haley, lots of people making contributions here. These are just like the top contributors. I, obviously didn't want to try and fit, all 400, across whatever. And then on the visualizer, Brandon takes the lead. Although it looks like Schaff is probably the actual leader here. There's just a little bit of duplication happening. One thing that I found interesting is, so I just set the window back to January 1st, 2023, sort of arbitrarily. It's the start of a new year. Um, and the stats are always going to be funky in the very early stages of a project. But our contributor retention is hovering in the 15 to 20% range at any given point, which is, pretty good for an open source community. One of the cool things about open source is you can have people come by and make one contribution, and then you'll never see them again because they fixed that one thing that matters to them. But it's good to see people sticking around after that first or second contribution. And I don't have stats in front of me for like what the distribution of that looks like, but just anecdotally in my experience, a 20% retention rate is pretty awesome. Especially as you get beyond the just a handful of people contributing. Um, so where do these contributors come from? We had apparently 90 organizations represented. Some of these are people who are unaffiliated. Some of it maybe people who have switched roles, so have gone from one company to another. But over the entire history of GUAC, according to LFX, there have been 90 different organizations. So, that includes a lot of names you'd expect: Kusari, Google, Purdue, Citi, uh, Defense Unicorns, Red Hat, um, Guidewire, lots of great contributions from many different places, which is also awesome to see. Um, One thing I found interesting was our pull requests we peaked in 2023, but most pull requests were closed within a few days, which is really great to see. It means when people make contributions, we are responsive to them. Um, and I apparently duplicated this slide, so cool. And then just kind of closing, LFX tries to provide some, um, sort of summaries in terms of, our most recent quarter, we had 21 active contributors. So that's people opening issues, pull requests, reviewing pull requests, making commits, things like that. So 21 is in their happy range, and 22% of people were contributing quarter over quarter, which is good. That's cornerstone of having a healthy community. Um, the things that are maybe we can improve on in the future, and I think the Trustify merger that's in the works will help with that. Um, we four contributors accounted for 51% of all contributions, and things have been a little slower in GUAC lately, so that's a little bit skewed. And then we've had one organization that has accounted for over half of the contributions. And so, that's always a concern in an open source project. Again, I think we'll sort of naturally see that change just from adding Trustify under the umbrella. Uh, so that's the stats I pulled kind of quickly this morning. Um, does anybody else want to chime in with some reflections or comments or speeches or anything?
I volunteer Parth.
It was a long journey to get this far. It was a very, very long journey. It was, I remember, I think when we first started this, it was like we got together at like a Google office to kind of like brainstorm what this would look like. And then that's how it kind of all started. And here we are, as it 3 years later kind of thing. It's like, it became, we did a lot of work. We did, I think in hindsight, we could have made some better changes if we had known things that we had knew now back in the day. I think we could have saved a lot of trouble or a lot of hassle, a lot of rework, right? We went from our Neo4j, we went to Orango DB, we went to and then eventually landed on Ent. So we did a lot of work with a lot of different databases just to figure out the one that would work the best. I mean, Orango, we could never predicted that the license changed. So otherwise, it was a very good graph database to use. But I think Ant actually performs similarly to a lot of graph databases. So I think along the way, again, I think we learned a lot. I think we made a lot of improvements. And I think it's at, where it's at right now at a 1.0 release. I think it's, it already does more than a lot of people are, a lot of the users are at in their journey. So I think we're always ahead of where, ahead of the industry basically in terms of like where this is kind of going. And I think that was our goal, is like to be the thinking out of the box, thinking ahead to see, okay, where will the industry eventually get to and what needs to be done? And then can we put the stepping stones in place that eventually people will get to this pace, get to a place where they can utilize the graph database into it, to its full extent and its full glory, right? So I'm excited to also get I mean, it was great contributions. Microsoft joined, Red Hat joined on board early. Of course, Google was there from the beginning. And then Red Hat, of course, a lot of large corporations saw the need, saw the benefit for GUAC, right? And it was great to see that they all came on board, helped us design it, helped contributions, helped with everything. So, looking forward to adding Trustify to GUACSec. I think that's definitely going to uh, help with, it brings the it takes a lot of the inspirations that GUAC started with, because I think, when the Red Hat team kind of came on board, they had the same inspiration, so that we kind of joined forces. So what they built out, I think, is going to be very helpful for people coming on board. It's a much nicer front end, all that kind of stuff. So I think it'd be much nicer for people to come on board. And then the GUAC piece is the more realized full experience of everything all combined together. So excited for that. So I think it was great. Great meeting people along the way. Great attending all these conferences, and it was, people knew GUAC. I think we talked about it a lot and all that kind of stuff. So I think we did our job, and everyone knew what GUAC was. At the end of 3 years, I think everybody knows what GUAC is, and what it stands for. So.
Thanks, Parth. Anyone else want to say a few words in celebration? Don't want to make it sound like a funeral.
I think I would mostly parrot most of what Parth said there. It's been a fun, interesting journey over the past, I guess 3 years ish. Um, there. Um, yeah, again, I'm mostly parroting what Parth was saying, but yeah, I still remember that, day sitting in the sort of Google offices, brainstorming, thinking through sort of different ideas, coming up with like, you know, what eventually became the ontology, what eventually became a lot of the other bits, thinking through what were the initial things, also maybe making some missteps along the way of assuming everybody was coming in with S-bombs already, with full-fledged S-bombs, and then also assuming that a lot more folks were using salsa and some of the other things that, turns out, hey, it does take several years for these things to get adopted in a good way. But I also think like even beyond just GUAC the app, a lot of the way of the GUAC thinking has sort of transformed sort of supply chain security, which is pretty cool. Like a lot of the ways that folks have said, oh yeah, GUAC itself is not necessarily what I was looking at, but I took that idea and what you guys did here, here, and here, and threw it into what we were doing, and if it made sense, which I think is awesome to sort of see it still have a big impact even beyond just the tool itself, which is pretty cool.
All right. Anyone else? All right. I'm not seeing anyone unmute or raise their hand. So again, you know, congratulations to all of us. This is really big. A lot of projects start and never reach, what is it, a 1.0 kind of milestone. So it's really awesome that we've gotten there. And I'm really excited to see where we go next. Along those lines, let's go on to the next item on the agenda. I asked Brant at the very last minute to talk a little bit about the work he's been doing using GUAC and Zarf. And I know if you're going to be at Open Source Summit in Denver, He has a talk. Is it part of the community day, or is it in the okay? So OpenSSF Community Day, there he has a talk. So I thought it might be a good opportunity to let him share a little bit of his work and, dry run some of the thoughts he wants to share in the coming days. So
Yeah, appreciated. I would say, like, in full transparency, a lot of what I wanted to try to do with this was like take a stab at the dark of like things that I know aren't integrated today, right? And I don't think this is a like, oh, GUAC doesn't do these things. I think we had a great air gap discussion of like things that we may want to look at and evaluate in the future, but there are clear things me as a Zarf maintainer of like Zarf does not do this, and I want to see like what I could try to poke at. So this is a very non-standard CFP submission from myself, where the idea that I was posing is not a finished product. It is a let's see if we can get it integrated in time. And if not, then have can we capture the things that would need to change in order to accomplish the end to end? So there's a very, I'd say, real uh, opportunity present that the presentation could be here's what we tried to do and here's what we learned versus here's what we did and here's how it works. This is not a slide driven presentation. It is very much supposed to be, as fun and engaging as I can make it from a terminal uh, to just try to talk through here's this happening in real time, right? And the beauty of Zarf is like all of my demos with Zarf never assume connectivity to the internet. And so I can just turn off Wi-Fi, and if I've got the things prepackaged, then like I can be on my way. So for those who haven't seen the Open SSF Community Days presentation submission that I have, it's really pretty straightforward. Let's see if we can align kind of like SBOM delivery and, kind of the ingestion by GUAC in something that you already inherently perform if you're a Zarf package user today. And what I mean by that is, and I can show some examples of some of the in progress work. But let's say I want to deploy GUAC into my environment with Zarf. You package up the Helm charts, and I probably actually show this. Um, you package up all the artifacts, and let's just go all of that. Um, you package up all the artifacts that you need to deploy the application you want to deploy. And when you run Zarf package create, it goes and assembles all of these artifacts from their upstream sources and puts them all into a single isolated tarball. So for this one in particular, I'm deploying GUAC. Um, Hopefully this is large enough to see. And I'm pulling out some of the dependencies so that I can roll those out before maybe other services that rely upon them. So just like the GUAC Helm chart does, hey, here's min.io. Wonderful. Here's the images for min.io so that I can go and grab those. Here's where the chart is, version, etc. Nats, same scenario. GUAC, same scenario with a little extra goodness that I'll show here in a minute. And so what happens during all of this, again, it's not very pretty to look at because Zarf is very much a CLI, is it grabs all of those artifacts, puts them in the tarball, and then now you can transfer those over to your end environment, which is great. Now you can deploy GUAC very deterministically to one cluster to many clusters, all using this same package. With that said, what Zarf does today is grabs all those artifacts and does various things with them, puts them in certain places, as well as grabs all the images, as well as builds SBOMs for the things that we can build SBOMs for. What's great about that is when you take this, if you're a third party consultancy, etc., and you built a Zarf package for somebody who is then going to be a separate deployer from yourself, you can provide them with this Zarf package and they'll have everything they need to deploy it over and over again. Wonderful. They'll also have other artifacts like the SBOMs here. And so, with that said, this is where Zarf currently stops today. Yes, you have this package that you can use again and again to deploy. When you run a deploy, it does a few different things, but in particular, and that's not very fun to look at. You can see GUAC's deployed here, but Zarf stands up a Zarf Docker registry inside the cluster. I can talk about how it pulls a registry image when you don't have a registry to pull that registry image from. We can talk about that another time. But what happens is we start pushing all the images into this registry, and there is a service that Containerd can use to pull the images from this internal registry. That's all Zarf wiring. The fun part of this is we push the images into this registry, and then we deploy the Helm charts or the manifests or even just static files onto the host if necessary. And that's all great and wonderful, but then the SBOMs just stop. Like they're just sitting in this tarball and we don't do anything with them today. And so when I was looking to submit a new idea for like, let's again try something a little crazy here, something I know isn't a built solution. It was like, okay, well, Zarf is kind of one of the, I would say, few or only projects in the OpenSSF that kind of works around the software delivery problem, specifically to the air gap, but also connected. GUAC is very well positioned for SBOM ingestion, and then the processing and everything on top of that. Is there a way with which we could align these in such that if Zarf did one more step, hey, I'm deploying this package, is there somewhere that I could put these SBOMs that my deployment of GUAC could just innately, automatically read from? And so I think there are going to be some things that we need to figure out with regards to how to wire that all together. Also some like constraints. But nonetheless, the idea here is I think the answer is yes. I think we need to identify what those constraints are and talk about and see if we can hack something together before OpenSSF Community Days. But nonetheless, every time that somebody does a Zarf package deploy, because we have a lot of Zarf users and they all have to use Zarf package deploy if they want to deploy the thing. I think there's a what if scenario here of what if we were just pushing the SBOMs to that location that GUAC or some other, application as well could read from in a standard way format that's accepted by, people who read SBOMs from various locations, that, they could just start picking it up. And so ideally it'd be very cool to see the visualizer. Zarf connect. That's not a command. Connect GUAC. It'd be very cool to see like Zarf package deploy. Hey, I deployed the GUAC package. Zarf package deploy. Hey, I deployed pod info. Like every time that somebody runs Zarf package deploy, it's just automatically pushing those SBOMs somewhere. And then ideally, we start to see that population of SBOMs in the visualizer. And it was not a manual process. You're not running some CI/CD pipeline on some other action somewhere else. It's just like a native. Hey, I'm already doing this activity. Is there one additional step we could take to align these projects, being that they're both OpenSSF projects, and kind of just improve the general workflow based on accepted standards and practices. So more work to do. But I'm pretty excited about the idea.
Well, thanks, Brant. Did anyone have questions, comments, suggestions?
Yeah, I just would like to echo Brant. Yeah, I agree. I think having Zarf deploy automatically push to guac would be an excellent integration.
I think just speaking out loud to the thought process, and so that somebody can steer me if I'm heading in the wrong direction, is we have this Zarf internal registry. It is not, um, I would say, configured for like it does not have TLS configured, so it's just HTTP. So I don't know if there's a constraint there of like the guac collect registry command is going to have problems connecting. Um, we also have credentials for that Zarf Docker registry, so I might need to find a way to feed those in if that's necessary to read from the catalog endpoints. But I think the general idea was that in the Helm chart, there's the OCI collector, and it looks like the command is very easily modifiable from reading a guac collect image to a guac collect registry. And I could change that and add the endpoint, I believe. And that would be my first thought for like, that's where Zarf is putting everything to begin with. If something is just watching that, then that's my first avenue of approach.
Yeah, watch I think makes sense. And then kind of like the source of truth. But I don't know Zarf well enough. Like if you have a command that's actually executing, uh, the lines of code to actually push to Guac natively aren't a lot, you know. If you have the SBOM, the only issue there is that there's kind of two ways to push to Guac. One being with a pub sub, and the other being like directly like running an ingester code and directly to the GraphQL server. And so those present like a kind of a set of options to the user, and then the config would be, you know, what's the endpoint for the GraphQL server, or what's the endpoint for the pub sub, and the there's also has to be a bucket storage. So you know, and then that's like how when you run the OCI collector, that's basically the parameters you'd be giving it. So that would have to be like a Helm chart parameter or something like that, or you know, just a command line if there's a command line.
Okay. I'm going to think about that more. Do you see
Yeah.
this as like supplementary or like mutually exclusive in the idea of like, can I use the OCI collector natively and potentially be done, provided I can get my things into the right location, and I would need to potentially implement this other thing, or
No, it would probably be either or. You know, if the OCI collector is good, that's good, but that is, yeah, you just throw it in the Helm chart. It just runs. It just sits there and watches, or whatever, or you know, whatever we need to get it to kind of trigger and do the actual ingestion.
okay, wonderful. Yeah, that sounds great. I think
Mhm.
having the options available and knowing that I could potentially have a fallback of like, let's try and hack
Mhm.
something together really quick because of
Yeah.
a constraint is wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, I would just like Jeff was saying, maybe I'm not sure if the direct ingestion would work, if that's possible. Yeah, the you know, the command line. Maybe you don't need pub sub or anything else to ingest directly. So maybe it's a deeper integration into Zarf. I don't know, but something to look at.
Yeah, I think it's a totally fair option. I think, and I believe it should be on the table. I want to maybe try to figure out like what those different threads look like, and the idea with the broader approach, the OCI 1.1 and the referral API. My first inkling was like for people who are not using GUAC, like, is this still something valuable to them as Zarf users, etc.? And I think that there's a lot of different ways to look at it, but those are totally valid.
All right. Anything else? All right. Well, thanks again, Brant, and I hope your talk goes really well. And I hope the next 2 weeks give you a lot of opportunity to figure a few of those things out. But either way, it should be a really interesting talk.
Appreciate it.
Speaking of talks, so I did add into the notes some upcoming events. Of course, our next weekly maintainer meeting is going to be on Monday, as it almost always is. The next community meeting will be returning to the third week of, or the third Thursday in July, or third Thursday of the month, which in July is Thursday the 16th. I went through the schedules for Open Source Summit North America and its associated OpenSSF Community Day, trying to find talks from either about GUAC or from people who are active in the GUAC community. So I listed some there. If you know of one that is on the schedule that I missed, please add it or let me know. I'll probably throw out a blog post at the beginning of that week just to highlight the community's participation. And then I got ahead of myself a little bit and also did the same thing for Open Source Summit Europe. And so again, if you know of something or you find something on the schedule that I missed, please let me know. And with that, we have reached the end of the agenda. Does anyone have anything to add at the last minute?
I'll see folks in Denver, or will be in Denver. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks again, everyone. We'll see you next month or before then. But just one last time, congratulations to everyone who has contributed to GUAC over the past 3 years. 1.0 is out the door. And we'll talk to you all later. Bye.